Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial. So we're going to be drawing some kind of stylized animal today. Before I start drawing, I just want to talk quickly about the tools I'm using. So this is a A3, I think moleskin, pretty sure it's moleskin, drawing pad, and we have the Prismacolor Color Erase blue pencil, which is an animation pencil, and tools you use aren't the most important thing. In fact, you could be using anything. You could be using biro, you could be using a standard HB pencil. This is just something I enjoy using. I think you get quite nice lines from it, and it's the thing that I like using about it most is that it's easy to rub out. So you make a mistake, it's going to disappear quite nicely, and you can keep drawing in the same place, keep rubbing out, and it rubs out quite nicely. The other thing with the blue pencil is if you scan it in and you wanted an ink on top of it, it's easy to remove the blue in the color channels in Photoshop or whatever digital program you're using. So when we're drawing stylized animals, we have so many more choices than we would if we were drawing a realistic animal, because we can push proportions, we can push heads really far, have a really big head, we can place the eyes anywhere on the head that we feel like we want to. We can place the legs or arms around the front, have little legs, we can have really long legs. And stylization it's a thing that you learn over time, and you learn by looking at other artists, and you develop a kind of visual language which you're comfortable with. So the only real way to practice this is to keep drawing, keep trying to work out what you like about certain proportions, look at other artists. That's probably the most important thing, and basically just play around with things that you enjoy doing, and you'll eventually, I guess, come to a style that you're comfortable with. So another thing I want to talk about just before we start is lines. So there are so many different kinds of lines we can have. Thick lines, thick outlines with less lines inside. And the way to produce these lines, obviously we can press hard, we can press really soft, we can shade things. I, for years, wasn't happy with my lines, and at one point I just decided I wanted more confident lines. I saw artists who had these really nice flowing clean lines, and there's no real secret to these. You just practice the hand movements that you're going to make. So instead of what a lot of beginners often you see do, is if you want to take a line from here to here in an arc, will unconfidently kind of do this hatching line, which can often go off course and look a bit messy, whereas I like to do a more sweeping line, and there are ways you can do that by holding the pencil at a distance and arching. You can just practice the movement and throw it in, and often you don't always hit where you want to go. You sometimes miss the target, but that's why we have rubbers, and often you can get an unanticipated but actually nice response, something you didn't expect, and you can use that to your advantage. So, practice your lines. They say that people who can draw a perfect circle are a little bit crazy, but try and get as close as you can. And it all depends what kind of look you're going for. So I like this kind of graphic illustration, almost graffiti kind of style, but you might not want to achieve that. You might want some thinner lines, something a bit more subtle, and it depends where you want to take it afterwards. So you can draw really lightly to begin with, get everything worked out, and then once you've laid things in really softly and you're happy with the direction that your drawing is going, what you can do is you can lightly rub that out and start making the purposeful decisions of, do I want a line to describe mostly the undersides of things, which is kind of a way of describing occlusion shadows and other shadows, cast shadows. I've heard a few people say that you basically want to be drawing your thickest lines on the shadow side, and you can even lose, say if our light source is coming from here, you can even lose the edge on the top that's facing the light. And I think the best way to work out the way that you want to work is, again, to look at other artists, decide what you think works from your favourite artists, and incorporate that into your work. So I, for example, really like the work of like Scotty Young or Francisco Herrera. I really like the way they push their lines, and Francisco Herrera especially has this really nice way of kind of thickening his lines towards the corners, and that's something I've absorbed into my work. I mean, he does it a lot better than I do, but I think to constantly practice and be influenced by people like that, and people like Raul Moreno, who I really like, Tien He. There are so many people doing amazing work. So, I think, was it Oscar Wilde who said, experience borrows, genius steals, or something to that effect. And that's what we do. We kind of stand on the shoulders of giants and take the things that they've learned from their kind of contemporaries, and this is why we slowly progress and art develops. We're not all starting from scratch, we're all starting from the point that someone left off at and adding our own little thing to it. So, that said, let's start thumbnailing.